All the stuff he promoted. Oh no, Vaush didn't do any homework again for a debate. How many times are you gonna do this?
You know, like out here they're less.
No, the Romanian. God, dude, at least quote him correctly. The sad thing is that Andrew Tate has a more sophisticated understanding of oppression potentially than Vaush does. It's Vaush time. I heard this is a really good conversation. Vaush is hitting up our friends in our sphere. He's trying to make his way back in. Cute.
Yo, what's up, buddy?
Howdy.
How you doing? You ready to go live?
I am live on my end right now, actually.
Cool, cool. All right, I'm gonna go live on my end too. All right, what up, guys? We are live. So we got part 2 of our debate with Vaush. So yeah, man, it's good to chat with you again. I think the big disappointment with our first debate was that it was too civil. We just wound up agreeing on too much shit. But fortunately, I think we're gonna heavily disagree on this. I don't know. We'll have to flesh out like kind of your position, but
I think he actually spoke to him first.
But yeah, thanks for coming on, Vaush.
Yeah, the pleasure's mine. Yeah, I'm sure we'll find a couple things we disagree with.
I think on the Andrew Tate issue, we definitely disagree. I'll start off with one thing that we disagree on, that we actually agree on. I was watching your video where it was called The Case for Why Andrew Tate Should Be Banned. Actually, first off, let me ask this question out of professional courtesy. Is there any words I can't say on your stream because you're streaming right now? Is there any words you want me to avoid?
You should be fine. I mean, I'd avoid the hard R just as a matter of courtesy, but outside that should be fine.
Okay, so I just say like R thing, right? Like something like that, refer to it that way?
Oh, yeah, like the N-word hard R.
Oh, that, okay, yeah.
Oh, no, you can say retard if you want.
Okay, I was talking about...
I don't know, Vaush's community ain't too happy with his stance on that.
Oh, no, you're good, don't worry.
Okay, cool. I'm just making sure, because I saw one of your videos, you...
He's so innocent, yeah.
Oh, that's just for the videos themselves. The streams always get demonetized anyway.
All right, cool. So yeah, I'll start off with on the one thing that we agree on when it comes to the Andrew Tate thing, and that is, I agree with you when you said the big reason why he got deplatformed is so he got too popular too fast. That was my thought initially as well. I think when you get so popular so fast, it's a double-edged sword. Once you get the popularity, but two, you're under a lot more scrutiny. So I think on that point, you and I very much agree.
Yeah, well, I mean, moderation on social media platforms is never going to be perfectly consistent. It's always going to be moderated through the attention economy and what gets focused on the most at any given point in time. So it makes sense that with his meteoric rise, he would attract all that attention so quickly, and that would cause the problems.
Yeah. Now here's where the disagreement starts. So you said, and this is a direct quote, I think Andrew Tate being deplatformed is good, right? Another thing, well, actually, we'll just stick on that for a second and we'll move on to the next thing. So what is your case for why is it good?
Well, I think it's at least on my end of the aisle, it's pretty self-evident that Tate's like a monstrously bad human being on almost every level.
Oh no!
Like
has
on a
Vaush watched anything?
Ethical level, like the information he distributes, the way he distributes it, everything about him just seems to be sort of maximized for worsening the world that we live in. And given that, I think that it's perfectly okay to sort of cultivate what gets the attention, the broader social media sphere. We've always had processes for that, as far back as human civilization goes. If you're disliked enough, if you're causing enough trouble, eventually you will be taken off the soapbox. And I think that's okay. By the way, I'm getting a bit of feedback from your mic when you're not talking. Let me see, is there a StreamYard setting for...
I think I could probably fix that. Yeah, hang on a second. Let me see. Tell me if
he's getting in his head, guys.
Gotcha.
Is it better now?
That totally fixed it.
All right, cool. All right, keep going.
Oh, no, that's it, really. Just I'm okay with the cultivation of presented content through terms of service.
Okay, well, let's explore that. Why is he a demonstrably horrible human being?
Is Vaush gonna have
it seems
examples?
like all the stuff that he promoted was mostly about like contempt for women.
All the
like
stuff he promoted. Oh no, Vaush didn't do any homework again for a debate. How many times are you gonna do this? It seems like all the stuff he promoted. Really, all the stuff? Do you think Alex is gonna push him for a single example and he won't be able to give an example of it?
That he had an incredibly callous attitude towards consent, putting that pretty lightly there. You know, like him saying that they have a lesser, sort of more moderate attitudes, maybe towards sexual assault in Romania. You know, like out here they're less...
No, the Romanian... God, dude, at least quote him correctly. When or from the clip that I heard, I think I heard him speak twice about this. When Andrew Tate talked about going to Romania because you can't get Me Too'd there as much or whatever, or the sexual assault stuff is different, he wasn't saying that he went there to rape women. He's saying that he went there to avoid false allegations of rape. That's what he said. Now, whether you think that take is bad or good, that's fine, go in on that. But it wasn't literally like, I like Romania because I can rape women easier. It was, I like Romania because women can't do false Me Too's against you. That's what he said. Like, just...
cucked, you know, less feminist with their definitions on some kinds of stuff like that. His main lesson plan just mostly seemed to be about making young men like worse versions of themselves, which is pretty socially destructive. Young men are pretty impressionable and insecure. They're pretty easy to manipulate.
You really feel like most of his content was about putting women down and being shitty to women?
No, I think there was a lot of other stuff, like sort of projecting his insecurities, flashing his wealth, promoting his pyramid scheme. Lying to people about the effectiveness of drop shipping and crypto investment. I think he did, like, I mean, he, like, holistically, like, he did a lot. But I do think, like, the sort of predominant drive of his content was, yeah, mostly about, like, fearing, hating, and trying to control women. You know, that was kind of, like, the main driver, I think.
Okay, on that we fundamentally disagree. I think the main driver, and again, I want to clarify, I'm not some big Andrew Tate fanboy. There are things before even he got deplatformed that I publicly disagree with him on, so I don't agree with all his positions. But as far as I saw, and I think as far as a lot of people saw it, the main driver of the main message he was pushing is how can men be better men. Now, some of the ways in which he advocated men becoming better men, I disagree with him on. Right, we can disagree on the two, but that was the main thing he was pushing. Now, in terms of women, his position was that women are precious creatures that should be protected, sometimes from themselves. Meaning, like, if he's in a relationship with a girl, he's going to do his best to protect her. Now, personally, that's not an attitude I take with my girlfriend, but I don't see that as being hateful towards women. I just see that maybe being a little outdated, you could say.
The sad thing is that Andrew Tate has a more sophisticated understanding of oppression, potentially, than Vaush does. Something that Andrew Tate said that probably applies here. Vaush should know this. There's different types of, like, soft sexism and hard sexism. And the type of sexism that Vaush seemed to be implying existed was a kind of a bigotry of small expectations thing, where women need to be protected because they're not as capable as men. And Andrew Tate correctly pointed out that sometimes oppressive behavior can come from a place of love. When your parents are telling you, don't do this crazy shit and pursue your dreams or blah, 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 they're not saying that because they fucking hate you. They're just saying because they're worried about you. They don't want you to do some crazy shit. They don't want you to waste your life being lazy. They don't want you to skip out on school and potentially not get a good job. Like, a lot of the bad things that people can do to you can come from a place of love, believe it or not. Vaush should understand this, but we'll see.
But I don't see any hate in that.
Well, this is always the attitude that the bigot takes, you know?
Oh, no.
Slave owners often argue that they were engaging in a kind of paternalistic protection of the slaves. That the slaves, the black African slaves, were naturally stupid and childish, so I
actually truly do believe, I think Vaush wasn't lying when he said he stopped watching my content, because he definitely got, like, markedly worse in understanding any of the shit that he talks about. Jesus.
Selfless white slave owners would provide stuff like food and housing, that it wasn't hate that motivated their interracial relations, but rather a kind of, you know, like, we all do what we can, and, you know, we fit within the slots God gave us. And misogynists tend to be like that too. This, like, you know, I love women, I want to protect women stuff, it's total bullshit. If you're a straight guy, then you loving women should be like a default. It's like a default presumption that kind of comes with the territory.
Being a straight guy, just because you want to fuck a woman doesn't mean that you love or respect women. What are you talking about? What?
Tori, people who talk about how much they love women, like, over and over, in between lines on how you have to control your woman to make sure she doesn't cheat on you, and, like, sort of glib comments on, like, your propensity towards abuse or your attitudes towards consent. It's really like a defense you're playing. You're, like, directing attention away. It's like, well, I don't, you know, my attitude toward, I don't, you know, hate women. I love women, you know. They're just, like, kind of stupid, and, you know, they need to be, like, led around, you know. Stuff like that. You hear it a lot from his community.
Yeah, we got to unpack a lot of those things you said. So first of all, I think we can agree there's a lot of men who don't love women. There's a lot of men who hate women on the internet. Would you disagree with that?
No, for sure. But, like, what do you mean when you say love? Would you agree that somebody can love women? Okay, like, I think Epstein loved women. I think he loved women in a lot of ways. I don't think he treated women well, you know? I don't know what it means to, like, love a woman in the way that a lot of these guys seem to.
Based.
Well, are you asking me how I personally love women? Or
no, I'm sure you have a normative attitude towards it. You know, I'm fine with that. I'm just saying, like, what does it mean when you say you love women? Like, what are you signaling, right? Because like,
well, think about it like this. I think this was his attitude towards women. And again, I agree it's outdated, right? But I don't think it's a misogynistic one. The way he saw it was like women are like like your favorite pet. Like you love your pet, but you sometimes protect your pet from itself. You keep it from maybe eating bad shit on the ground. Like I love my dog, but my dog, he's he's not the smartest thing, right? He sometimes eats shit off the ground. It's bad for his stomach. Now, again, I don't think you actually need to do that in a relationship, right? Like I don't think you actually need to protect a girl from herself. I think that's a major headache. But that in of itself, you can say is silly. You can say that's redundant, outdated. But I don't think you can say that's a hateful attitude towards women.
Well, it's literally thinking they're subhuman and that you have like the right to guide and dictate to them how to live, which is again like very comparable to where the slave owners treated slaves, right? Like, we don't hate the Africans. It's like, well, they need leading, they need guidance. Like that was a big line in terms of,
I was gonna say, are children subhuman?
Slave ownership, because it made it seem like actually they're, out of the goodness of our heart, we employ them and we give them food and bread and shelter,
Vaush, but that is a false analogy, because there's no choice, there's no consent. So slaves were forced into their position, right? They didn't choose to be slaves, they were forced to be slaves. All the women that Andrew Tate dates chose to date him. That's the big difference there.
Hopefully all the women who had sex with them too.
The random rape comment. Oh my god.
The comparison that I'm drawing is that it's possible to hate a group of people, and that hate is expressed through this like paternalistic, I'm more of a human than you, so like I get to make the decisions. Like the comparison between women and dogs is really common in like the Tate sphere of like the pickup artists, men's rights, whatever.
He got Tate sphered.
And there's really no way to believe that without hating women. If you literally think a group of people is subhuman, you can't really get around that, right? Like comparisons to dogs are historically tied like literally to acts of genocide when it comes to like the language you use to demean a group or to put them in a different like category.
Let me approach it like this. Let me give you another analogy. Think about like, okay, I'll just draw from my own childhood. My dad was very overprotective, right? My dad clearly loved me, right? But he didn't really let me make up my own mind when I was growing up. So I was like, Dad, I don't want to do karate anymore. I want to play soccer. Oh, that's a big mistake. I want you to keep doing karate, right? He was overprotective. But that's because he thought that I needed to defend myself. And there's elements of truth to that, right? Being able to defend yourself is good. But again, he wasn't like you wouldn't say that my dad hated me just because he was being overprotective of me, would you?
Well, no, because you were literally a child. But if you thought that a group of adults were like children, a group that's so disadvantaged that we put them in a different legal and social category, I would also consider that to be a kind of hatred, yeah. Because you're, again, basically saying they're subhuman. Like, they're adults, but mentally, they're basically children. Like, that's, what they said about the slaves. They did. They actually said that. The idea that blacks had naturally childlike minds was actually, like, one of the overriding like scientific racist sort of stereotypes that were used throughout the slave period.
But then you would have to bite the bullet and say that liberals actually hate black people, because as you've seen a lot of black content creators like Abba and Jay, whatever, I forget his name, say that like there's a lot of like liberal racism where basically it's not like blatant racism, right? It's just this condescending, like, listen, black people don't really know how to decide what's best for themselves, so we kind of have to help and guide them, right? So if we're going to say, and I don't think that's coming from a bad place, I think that's just white people generally trying to maybe help black people, right? But then you'd have to bite the bullet and say all those liberals actually hate black people because they're childizing them, infantizing them, not letting them make up their own mind.
If there was a liberal who said, I think black people are like dogs or children, I would agree that that is racist of them. In the same way that when Tate did it with women, I think it's sexist of him and indicates a hatred for that group.
Hatred.
I don't think liberals...
Okay, but just do the comparison to dogs. We don't hate dogs, do we?
But if liberals are trying to protect black people from themselves and helping them make better decisions for their communities, right, just basically kind of infantizing them and saying that, you know what, we can decide these things a little bit better for you. You wouldn't say that's racism, or would you?
Well, the majority of black people are themselves liberals, so this just seems like liberals of all races having opinions politically that differ from some black conservatives. I don't think that liberals generally are that paternalistic when it comes to like the political opinions of black people. If a black person has like a bad political opinion, I think you can just like disagree with it and that's mostly what I see happening. But a lot of black conservatives are like massive crybabies. So like, if you criticize them for having a shit take, they'll be like, well, I get to say this because I'm black. And if you point out that's not really an argument, they're like, well, you're telling me, a black person, how to manage my business. Like, well, you must think that I'm stupid. You're the racist, you know? And it's like this infinite cycle that goes nowhere. But Tate has directly invoked, like, women are children, like women are dogs, whatever, like they're lesser, you know? If a liberal did that with black people, I think everyone would agree that it's racist. So we have to agree that it's sexist when Tate does it with women.
I think we can agree on disagree on the liberal racism thing. I'll pose the question like this. Do you think it's fair for a man to dictate the terms of his own relationship?
Of course, everyone has a right to. But the terms that you have can obviously say a lot about you ethically, right?
This is one of the careful things you had to get into that I pointed out when some people were debating Tate. You have to keep in mind that, like, you can not like Tate's standards for relationships, but as long as people are, like, consenting to joining relationships with him, you can't really be that critical of, or you can't call him, like, a rapist, at least, or say that he's, like, forcing people to do that. Like, I mean, you consent to the terms of the relationship when you enter the relationship, right? Vaush isn't incorrect here, though, right? Like, the terms that you set for a relationship could say a lot about you as well. That is true too.
Sure, yeah, right. But it is your, like, so for example, I don't have a right to tell you how to have a relationship with your girlfriend. Meaning, if I think like you're doing something fucked up, it's not my place to come in and say, Vaush, you shouldn't be doing that with your girlfriend.
No, I think you have a right to. Like, if I abused my girlfriend.
No,
like,
we're assuming nothing illegal has taken place. Meaning, assuming like, I don't know, like, let's just say you're in a relationship where once a month you get to go out and fuck another girl, but she doesn't get to fuck anyone else. And I think that's unfair, right? It's not my place to come in and say that.
Well, it doesn't have to be illegal, right? Like, you can abuse a partner and gaslight them and, like, treat them like shit without, like, tripping the law. I think you would have a right to criticize me for that. I think that I have a right to, like, make decisions, but I think that those decisions are open to criticism. Like, legally, I have every right to not allow black people into my house. I can even say that openly. I could say that to a cop. They can't do shit about it. But I still think that would, like, warrant criticism, right? Like, you could say, even though it's your right to decide who goes into your house, I think you're racist for not allowing black people in.
Okay, yeah, you're right about that, but it's not, the better word is it's not my place to tell you how to run your relationships, right? That is your decision, not mine.
I'm fine with it. If you have an ethical qualm with something that's part of another person's relationship, I think that's totally fine. I think that, like, historically, there are plenty of legal things that are kind of like the norm in relationships that are really, really bad. Marital rape wasn't even illegal until a couple decades ago, so you could just rape your wife whenever you wanted with no legal consequences.
Wait, did he say, is marital rape legal now? Not based.
But I still think you can make the moral criticism, like back in, like, 1970 or whatever.
Okay. Okay, let's approach it like this, because I think we're maybe a little bit of a standstill. Tate has a different way of viewing relationships. He views relationships. We agree the fact that he views women as these basically creatures that need to be protected from themselves, right? What is the hate in that? Like, where does the hatred part lie?
I guess it really depends on, like, hatred, like the definition that you're using. So when I say hatred, like, you're literally
bigotry
like,
bigotry of
for me,
small
that's
expectations is what you're
like
looking for,
hatred.
or low expectations.
I find that usually men do this because they're incredibly insecure. They're not really afraid of women, like, hurting themselves. They're afraid of women's agency. So they'll say, like, hey, this is for your own good, and then they'll say, like, don't talk to other guys or whatever, because, like, you should only be interested in me. And it's motivated by insecurity. So I think, like, the hatred really is of, like, the stereotype of the pernicious or like an untrustworthy woman, and they're, like, terrified of it. And a lot of the control and political biases that come out of that are an attempt to try to assuage those insecurities.
Jesus.
Okay, I think we just need to start off by defining hatred, I guess. Okay, so how do you define hatred, Vaush?
When I say hatred, I mean, like, sort of contemptuous disregard or, like, depersonalization. But if you want, I can go with, like, dehumanization. Like, the term itself, I think, is replaceable with a few others in terms of, like, what I would criticize Tate's content for. Like, if I would accuse, like, a paternalistic slave owner, like, I don't know, Thomas Jefferson or whatever, of hating black people, but maybe it'd be easier to say, like, he thought them were subhuman, he dehumanized them.
Okay, so for you, hatred is interchangeable with dehumanization, basically.
Well, they tend to overlap, yeah. I mean, it's really, really difficult to justify dehumanizing a class of people without there being some kind of, like, deeply rooted emotional like contempt towards them in some form or another. And it's not like Andrew Tate never indicated contempt towards women. That was a pretty frequent feature of his content as well, you know. What women do, you know, when they do something wrong, like how do you punish them? How do you maintain, like, authority over them? A lot of it came across, like, pretty contemptuous.
So we partially agree on the fact, I agree with you that there's elements of insecurity in the way Andrew Tate handles relationships. Insecurity, though, is not always the same thing as hatred. You'd have to give me specific examples then of like some hateful things that he has said in reference to women or
example
in his
time.
Show me an example, like a specific example of contempt that he has for women.
I mean, I think he said that if a woman accused him of cheating, he would like slap them or like hold them down or something. I think he's made a couple comments that sort of
Oh, how could Vaush
consent.
Okay, the name of your debate, it's on Andrew Tate's deplatforming. So if you're gonna feel like he should be deplatformed, I feel like you probably need like at least 2 examples for why you think he should be deplatformed. That's a pretty big deal, right? Just 2 examples would be good to work from.
Like not exactly an affirmative consent kind of guy, like choke them, you know, like make her say yes, that kind of stuff.
He said to choke a woman that doesn't agree with something. Is this, now I don't know Andrew Tate stuff, all of it, but has Andrew Tate really said that? I feel like I would have heard about that one if he really said that. You should choke women that don't agree with you on things.
I don't have like a clip show here. You know, I'm sure if everyone like Google's worst thing Andrew Tate's have said, they'll find
I'm not
like,
here
a
to do the
HuffPost
research for you.
on like some of the more objectionable stuff, but the hatred stuff isn't really like the predominant thing. Even if there was no like hatred in him, like the dehumanization's enough for me. That hits the point just fine.
Okay. Well, so the slap thing, that was a joke though. Like you do know that, right?
I mean, yeah, people like him tend to say a lot of stuff that's jokes, I think. It's pretty difficult to tell because it fits perfectly in line with like all the politics he advocates for.
He advocates for beating women? Andrew Tate slap women joke. Can we find this? Wait, can somebody tell me where this clip comes from or link me this clip that you think he's referencing? There's a video of him beating... No, not a video, because that was clearly... The video was... The woman herself has come out and said it was consensual, and if you've watched it, it probably is. Why the fuck would you record something like that? Like, how fucking dumb. Because on that first page, a short.
Tate's a woman beater. He beats woman. Look at this video about video from me from 10 years ago.
No, not this.
Have you ever seen a woman try and do anything competently? Like, imagine a girl pick this up. If I pick this up, you ain't fucking with me. I'd have my left hand, I'd still like jab, I'd fucking swing low, take your fucking knee out. You ain't gonna see it coming. What would a woman do? Slap the machete, slap her in the face. One hand, machete, and then backhand. I perfected this in pimp school. When I got my PhD, we had to practice if a girl comes at you, you cheater, you cheating. It's bang out the machete, boom in her face, and then grip her up by the neck. Like, shut up, bitch! Her panties get wet. Machete's on the floor, her panties are all wet. You go, fuck her. That's how it goes. Slap, slap, grab, choke, shut up, bitch, sex. These are the basic moves of pimping. Fucking some little amateur. What if a girl picks it up? You're a fucking loser.
Okay, you can definitely be critical of him for his humor, for sure. That's totally fine. But I don't think this was authentic advice on, like, if a woman approaches you for cheating, I would slap her. Like, it feels like it's part of a joke. Now, again, you can be critical on somebody for their humor, but...
So like, you know, it's like a joke, right? And I've seen enough Andrew Tate fans to know, like, they have a pretty contemptuous attitude towards what you might call, like, a feminist, affirmative consent model of sex having.
I don't think that that video had anything to do with how to get a woman to consent or anything like that. I think we're pretty far from that in that video.
So, yeah. Again, like you can clip share, like, infinitely back and forth, and this is a joke, and that's a joke, and it's out of context, whatever. But at the end of the day, you agree with me. Like, he literally thinks of humans like a lower type of person. That, for me, is sufficient.
So humans as a lower type, or women, you mean?
Oh, sorry, as women. Like, a women lower type of humans, my bad. So that, to me, justifies, like, literally everything that you would, like, criticize him for.
Jesus.
I don't know if I would phrase it like that. I think he thinks women need to be protected from themselves, at least the woman that he's in a relationship with, or that a guy gets in a relationship with. I don't know if that actually means that he thinks they're lower. I just think he thinks they're different, meaning like we can agree that women are physically weaker, right? Like, so if I'm walking down...
Similar joke, different video.
Slap, slap, grab, choke, shut up, bitch, sex.
Okay, that's a 4-second clip, but okay.
With my girlfriend and someone threatens us, it makes more sense for me to be the one that physically gets involved because I'm a lot stronger than her. My girlfriend's 5 feet tall. So he just goes a little bit further with that line and thinks, well, women, you know, maybe are a little bit more emotional. They tend to make more rash decisions. So maybe it's your duty, if you're in a relationship with your girlfriend, to protect her from making bad decisions. I don't think he thinks it's inferior. It's just different. But women, for example, might be better when it comes to, like, you know, emotional stuff. Like, when I say emotional stuff, I mean like, you know, social situations, right? Like reading the room, or maybe maternal things and stuff like that. So I just think he thinks they're different things. Not one is better or worse than the other.
The problem is, like, that's what they always say, right? Like, white supremacists will say the same thing. Like, I don't believe white people are better than black people.
Can you think of anything that's not like fucking slave owners, white supremacists? Like, well, it's interesting that you say that women should go to all women's schools and men should go to all men's schools. In South Africa, when they did apartheid, like, bro,
are good at civilization, math, science, intelligence, and everything, and black people are good at basketball. The implication's always there. And also, like, the comparison between women and dogs and or children, like, dogs and or children aren't like different kinds of adults. They're like legally and capability wise like worse than adults. Children are literally underdeveloped and dogs are literally not human. But these are frequent comparisons that are made. If the only
those are comparisons I made, just for the record, not Tate. I said those things.
No, I know, but like he has as well. The comparison between women and dogs has been like a pretty common men's pickup artist thing for a long time. And dogs and children are lesser to adult humans, you know, kind of by definition, right? It's if it was just like, oh, if you're a guy, like you should use your superior strength to help in situations where that's relevant, I don't think anyone would object to that. But he's talking about being like the leader in decision making broadly, because women can't do that because men do it better, and that is like a category of people he's putting on a lower step than men.
Okay, you agree there are fundamental differences between men and women, right?
Yeah, but not when it comes to like their ability to manage their lives, the worth of their agency, or anything like that. It would just be like, I mean, their average like strength and size differences, reproductive stuff, minor stuff like that.
True.
Definitely not in regards to their agency. But for example, it's not a really far stretch to say that men, on average, make better leaders than women. That's due to testosterone, due to some brain differences, right? That's not a big stretch. I think there's pretty good data for that.
That's true.
There isn't, though.
Okay, you would disagree with that?
No, yeah, 100%. There's no evidence at all that the brain structure of men and women, respectively, makes men better leaders. But that belief is like a common, like,
Vaush is going to lose this argument, though, if he's going to try to have this without any source whatsoever. Because I know this Alex dude probably has shit.
But, you know, that's not really like... that's not really like an affirmation of the difference, right? I mean, there were social biases between white and black people in Jim Crow era America. Like, that's, you know, that's kind of leading on the
Vaush is like, thank God for slavery and black people.
But you don't think massive differences in testosterone will play a role in how assertive you are in a workspace?
I don't, in terms of how assertive you are, like, this is very socially determined. When women are assertive, they get called bitches, and when guys are assertive, they get called go-getters. So there's kind of like a socially discouraging factor. And even then, like, assertiveness isn't always a good thing, right? Like, lots of guys are so assertive that they're like machismo-laden dumbasses who get themselves in trouble 24/7 because they can't, like, restrain their ego. Oftentimes, like, really effective leaders are kind of like patient, quiet, socially oriented. How can you say women are better at social stuff but men are better leaders? Like, isn't that a contradiction?
Nice. He got stumbled
Not
into
necessarily.
close quarters.
Being a leader is a very, very specific type of social things, right? It's a very specific and distinct type. There's many other types of social things. I think this is where you and I are going to disagree on. This is a whole new can of worms. You're going to say, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the reason why that like 98% 8% of Fortune 500 CEOs are men is because of social factors and because of biases in the workplace. I'm going to say it's partially because of that, but partially also because of biological factors. Am I assuming your position correctly?
You're correct. Yeah, I think it's overwhelmingly social influences
Right.
rather than biological ones.
Right, and I'm gonna say it's closer to like split down the middle, but that's a whole can of worms that I think we can debate for hours and hours on it.
The problem is that there's just no scientific evidence for the claim that it is. Usually because usually this is how it happens. This is like the problem with EvoPsych, right? You'll have a social bias. Some group of people are treated worse than the other. And people will say, oh, well, that's not unfair. One group is just naturally different / worse than the other. What's the evidence for this? Well, no. And then they like come up with some explanation. Then social circumstances change and that gap like sort of closes. And then like it was just like cope, right? Back in the 50s, the Irish had like a much lower average IQ than the English, but now it's completely caught up. But back then they thought it was because the Irish were just genetically inferior, you know?
Yeah, I mean, again, like this is like I don't want to open up this rabbit hole, but I'll quickly address what you said. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick. There are fundamental differences between a man and a woman brain. Female has greater volume in prefrontal cortex, subprefrontal cortex, superior temporal cortex, lateral, blah, blah, blah. Males on average has greater volume in ventral, blah, blah, blah. So there are fundamental differences, and you can just go through studies for days and days. There are fundamental differences.
Well, if Alex wanted to really throw a wrench in Vaush, what Alex could have said, wait, so you agree that there are no differences whatsoever in the brains of men and women? Well, what about for trans people? I thought that, Vaush, don't you make the argument that sometimes we know that transness is like a biological thing because like there are differences in like the trans brain versus like what we'd expect to see like in a cis woman's brain or a cis male's brain?
Between a man's brain and a woman's brain. Now, look, no one's going to give you a clear-cut answer how those differences in the man's and woman's brains are going to manifest in terms of their, let's just say, ability to climb the work hierarchy, right? That's going to be more of a theorizing type of thing. But there are, to say that there's like no differences between a man's and woman's brains is fundamentally not true. Like all the science supports that, yes, there are. They've studied this to death. There are fundamental differences between a man's brain and a woman's brain. But yeah, that's, I think.
You said no differences.
I know there are differences, but the question is, to what extent can those differences be determined to be like causatively affecting social outcomes? We know there are differences in size and brain matter and stuff on average.
Oh, okay.
But like there are no like leadership genes. The question is, now that we know those differences exist, what do they affect? There are, of course, differences that do affect stuff. Obviously, due to the hormone washes that men and women tend to be subjected to, there are.
I hate this phrase that he uses. Where did Vaush get? Somebody must have emailed him this phrase, hormone wash. I've never, ever seen this phrase. I think I tried to search for this online. I don't think in any literature I've ever seen this phrase, hormone wash. I think he got this like during his. I don't know if this came from his debate from like the trans stuff or what, but it's such a weird.
Differences in a lot of stuff having to do with reproduction, for example. They say like pain tolerance for women is higher. Women, estrogen makes you more emotional, so women are probably more likely to cry. But testosterone also makes you more emotional. People don't talk about that because like people even have jokes about like roid monkeys, like gym bros who like get doped up on roids and then get super angry and they're emotional and shit. But nobody says like testosterone makes you emotional. You know, they say it makes you like strong, because like emotional is the dirty word they use for women with their hormone, you know?
Let me just quickly address the testosterone thing. This is actually something I know a lot about because I take testosterone replacement therapy. I've thoroughly researched testosterone to the T. So you're partially correct. Testosterone does make you more emotional if you go to super physiological levels. But let's say you're a man who has low testosterone and you get on TRT and you get into like the optimal range, you actually become a lot more calm and grounded. That's exactly what happened to me. So I was having these mood swings where I had low testosterone, got on TRT, right? And when I got to the optimal range, I felt more calm and grounded, less emotional. Now, when I try to play around with it and go a little bit too high, yes, I did experience that, you know, when you go too high. But it's with testosterone, if you're in that optimal range, that actually makes you calm and grounded. It's only when you go too high that you become emotional. But that's a little bit of a side point. But it's not that like more testosterone makes you more emotional. That's incorrect.
Well, you're trying to like balance out within the physiology you have, but on average, testosterone does contribute to higher like degrees of violence or anger. So, for example, it's not a coincidence that men are responsible for like 90% of violent crime, like everywhere, and a lot of that is a product of like crimes of passion, like impulse control stuff. So like in terms of like people say like women are more emotional, women cry more often, sure, but guys are more likely to snap and kill you. So in
Sure,
terms of
we
like,
agree on that.
yeah, so yeah, the problem it's the way this stuff gets like framed. You know what I mean? Like women are more emotional, so they can't be as good of leaders. But guys, well, it's like they're take charge, and them being angry is actually like in service of that. It's all these weird like linguistic tricks we play to justify the biases we have.
Yeah, I mean, like you and I can go through studies for days and try to get to the bottom of how much of a role like the testosterone brain differences make in leadership. I think we're getting off topic on the debate, so I want to bring it back to the. That could be an interesting discussion we'd have another time. But I want to get back on track with the Andrew Tate thing. So we're talking about. You said that it doesn't necessarily need to be hatred; it can be just the fact that you're subhumanizing someone, correct? And that would be enough
Subhumanizing.
for you. So
New word alert.
So basically, even if there is no hatred, if Andrew Tate is subhumanizing women, you're okay with that being the reason to
Dehumanizing
get
is
him
the word we're
kicked
looking
off.
for, right?
Yeah, because once you've deemed a group of people to be subhuman, you can do or say basically anything with them. You've basically designated them like a legitimate victim of any political claims that you want to make about them. Which is why like you know, usually guys in the Tate sphere, like it's not long before you see people talking about like outlawing adultery, or like there are a lot of people who don't think women should have had the right to vote, like they think it was a mistake. You know, stuff like that. Like it always goes downstream once you designate a group of people to be subhuman. I mean, that's what people have always thought about women in patriarchal societies, right? Like they love women. I mean, of course they love women, like they love fucking them, you know. They're pretty, you know, they're nice to be around, but like they're still like kind of dogs that need to be led around, you know. And like we have thousands of years of oppression of women to show for like where that attitude leads, you know. Islamic extremists love that line, by the way. Like the whole like, we love women, that's why we seek to protect them by covering them up so that their beauty is preserved, you know.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Islamic fundamentalists are a pretty bizarre group of people. But right now, we got to acknowledge that there's some speculation going on your side, because Andrew Tate has never directly said women are subhuman. And if he did, correct me if I'm wrong. So we are trying to figure out, based on the other things he said, how he views women. Like, would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's not, even if he hadn't said, I mean, he's literally said, like, you have to train women like dogs, and said women are like dogs a lot, I think. And I think he's compared, like, your girlfriend to property. I mean, I think he's been, like, I didn't like load up, like, dozens of examples of whatever, but he's got a lot of content
Just
out
like
there, and
two
I'm pretty
examples
sure he
would've been
ran
good,
through this,
Vaush.
like, pretty often, too. But, like, the attitude that he procured with his audience...
Has Vaush
is
ever
pretty
said on stream why he just
straightforward.
doesn't like to
Whatever language he
prepare
used
for debates at
specifically,
all? Is there, like, a
the
reason for
derision
this,
and
or-
disregard for women was, like, a consistent product of his content.
What's the evidence for that?
I mean, I'm not entirely sure how to substantiate this, but like his audience is like full of the worst humans on earth. They hate women. They fear women because women don't call them back. So it's like an insecurity thing, you know? Because that's like the bulk of where the attention gets, right? Like you hear an Andrew Tate fan, they're not my age and they're not your age. They're like high school kids, you know, sometimes middle school. And they're afraid and insecure of women because they're just hitting puberty. They're nervous. You know, and they know like women are kind of like the gatekeepers of sex, which socially to an extent they are, especially when you're young. And they're looking for answers. And then you've got Andrew Tate, who's using his like drop shipping crypto business to get a bunch of people to spam clips of him on social media. And they see this guy who's like yoked, talk about how like women are like dogs that need to be trained properly, you know. And this like really fucks with these kids, you know. A lot of them, like massively so. It's like a social harm.
But wait,
Spreads.
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, not at all. I was rambling for a bit.
Okay, but I would say, what's the evidence that Andrew Tate fans fear and hate women? Because I have friends who are Andrew Tate fans, and I can tell you for a fact that none of them hate women. So do you have like some kind of anecdotal evidence, or you have like what is your evidence for that claim? Because that is a pretty big claim.
Well, we're making
like I could easily make that claim. Vaush's fans hate white men, right? But I have no proof for it, right? Like, so what's the evidence?
well, we're making the problem is that there's no way to compile evidence that you would be satisfied with. We're making claims about people's like mental states, right? So if you collect 5 anecdotes from a population of millions, you can form any opinion that you want. With Andrew Tate fans, there were literally millions of fans. I could cultivate like a ton of stuff if I was given the time to, but it would always not be a representative sample. You would have to use like
So here's like something Vaush could have done. Vaush could have gone, here's something we could do. Vaush could go Andrew Tate YouTube. Let's go to Andrew Tate. Oh no, I can't do that actually now. Fuck. I would have to pick we would have to pick like a comparable. Here's something we could do. Let's try this. We could do red pill dating advice. Let's see. Let's try to find relatively modern stuff. So I'll say 1 year ago is good. What are some hard to swallow pills about relationships? Let's look for like red pill stuff. Advice and red flags. Is this a red pill guy? I don't know. How to be red pilled in a relationship. That's only got 91,000 views. Oh, Patrice O'Neill. I hear this guy brought up all the time by Sneakos. Jordan Peterson drops a red pill on a woman that has hit the wall. Okay. Okay, so let's do these 3 videos. So
and definitely
what we could do is we could sort comments by top comments. I think they might automatically be sorted by top comments.
Most young.
So these are 3 videos from different people that talk about red pill things. And then let's see what comments they make about women. We'll look at the top 3 comments on each. The best career advice that I learned is don't attach yourself to a person, a place, or a company. Only attach yourself to... Okay, sure. Red pill doesn't have to be toxic. It is really just coming to the conclusion that you as a man deserve respect from women. You hold yourself to a standard. And then 3, it's nice seeing how the red pill is becoming more and more popular nowadays. This one you could argue is misogynistic, maybe. She rose from the streets, and to the streets she shall return. So from top 5 comments, not too bad. Let's check this video. The most sex you'll ever get is treating them like they are nothing special. I'm going to be a little misogynistic. He's a comedy genius. Patrick's on another level. Women don't give advice on how to get them. They give advice on how to befriend them. And fellas, do you honestly want to be your friend? That's kind of a shitty thing to say a little bit. Unless you don't want to get friend zoned, maybe. And then on the Jordan Peterson one, these seem to be relatively nice. Oh, but this probably has to do with women working. This isn't like a red pill dating video. Wait, feedback shared with the crowd. Oh, sorry. All right, anyway. But anyway, that'd be like an example of how Vaush, like, I don't know why he's saying like it's impossible to quantify this. Or you could even more specifically go with Alex's videos and go to like sort by the top 3 videos, look at the top 5 comments on each, and see if the comments are like really misogynistic or not. Because if he does this and there's like 20 misogynistic comments that are like highly upvoted across like 5 or 6 different videos, that's a really good evidence for your claim right there. Like you can do something. It's not like you can't do anything. Like, and this would probably take what, 5 minutes of research maybe?
To live my life. He was saying like, this is how women are, this is how men are, this is how we should behave, this is what you can do to be an alpha. So he was giving advice. And again, this would get you banned in a real workplace. There's nothing that Tate did that wouldn't get him banned in a real job. Unless, of course, he was the CEO, in which case he would probably just get, like, civil suits for sexual harassment.
What?
But outside of that, like, he got more leeway than any regular employed person would.
What? Have you ever had a YouTube strike of any kind on your channel?
A couple of times. It's always, like, content ID stuff.
Yeah, me too. I got one, right? So typically YouTube policy is whenever someone breaks the rules is to remind them they broke that rule. And when YouTube wants to take things further, instead of just giving you a playful, like whatever, like a reminder or warning, they actually give you a strike. And if you get 3 strikes, then you're out, right? So that's a pretty fair system, right? That system that is in place wasn't followed in Andrew Tate's case. He didn't get like a strike like, hey, you can't do this content. It was like, you're done, completely kicked off. There was no chance to redeem yourself. There's no chance to change your content. That is a pretty extreme situation. Like, why was he treated differently than me and you were treated when we made content that went against YouTube's terms of service?
Well, you can get insta-deleted from YouTube if they find 3 strikes at a time. You're not limited to only getting 1 strike at a time. But there's nothing in their TOS that limits them from just banning people off platform anyway. Like, imagine...
Sure, but that's standard policy.
Yeah, but imagine, for example, if there was a YouTuber who dropped a video that was them just giving you, like, a 40-minute step-by-step instruction on how to, like, molest children. Which is, by the way, that video would not in itself be illegal, depending on how it's phrased. I don't think that's a 1-strike video, right? That's a 3-strike video to me. That's a you're out of there type video. So I think we can agree there are situations that are extreme enough where YouTube has the right to just sort of swing down the hammer. And given the fact that Andrew Tate's like this uber wealthy, like media magnate who's like weaponizing his if not pyramid scheme, at least like financial empire to spread his content farther than any person could on their own. Like he's not some little witty bitty channel, right? He got invited to Tucker Carlson right after he got banned. You know, I'm not too concerned, I guess, about his well-being given the social harm he's caused.
Jeez.
Well, I'm glad at least I got you to stop saying pyramid scheme, so that's a small win right there.
It's a pyramid-shaped scheme. So sorry, not a pyramid scheme.
Come on, don't
A
go
pyramid
back
shape.
on that.
It is literally a pyramid shape. All the affiliates
Come
down
on.
form. So it's a pyramid-shaped
We're making some
scam.
progress.
A triangular scam, not a pyramid scheme. My
Just
apologies.
affiliate marketing, bro. Just affiliate marketing, regular affiliate marketing that most people do. I don't think someone's money or wealth should have anything to do with like how the policy is enforced on them. I agree with you. There are some extreme cases. So if I make a video like where I'm like saying, yo, go kill these people, they probably won't give me, although I don't know how it will work, but I'm assuming, let's just assume they would just kick me off the platform. But that's like really extreme things. That's less about like your message and like the things you're saying. That's more like you're saying like really out there things. I personally don't think Tate was anywhere close to that. Like he's not inciting violence. I just think that, okay, fine. Like
Kind of
you
like
think
talks about like rape victims, sort of like bringing it on themselves, joking about like.
what do you
abuse
wait?
of them.
What,
You gotta have an
when did you say
example
that?
of at
I
least
said
one of
rape
these
victims
things.
have to take responsibility for what for
Rape victims taking responsibility. It's not the same as saying rape victims bring it on themselves. Ugh.
for the rape, like or like they like their part in it, like wink nudge, like.
Oh, no, okay, Vaush. All right, let's discuss that. Okay, because I'm actually pretty familiar with that. So if you watch the long form content on that, what he was actually saying is this: he's saying, obviously, I think rape is messed up. I don't think anyone should be raped. However, if I had a daughter and I would tell her not to go out late at night on a certain part of town because that is going to increase her likelihood of getting raped, right? So that's basically what he was saying, is that with rape victims, there's things you can do to minimize the chance of rape happening. And if you just defer and just say, oh, well, I have no control in this matter, you're actually limiting yourself. And that's a pretty reasonable position to have. It's like, hey, listen, like, obviously it's not your fault, but there are things you can do to limit your odds of being raped. Rape is wrong either way. But like, you're not doing people any favors or any service by saying it's totally outside of your control. There are elements of things that you can do, like have a taser, not go to certain parts of town, that will minimize the odds, and thus it is partially with your control. That's not a crazy position.
Okay, but everyone believes there are things you can do to lessen the chance of being raped. Sometimes, oftentimes people are just drugged, or the rape happens from somebody they already know.
Stop. Hold on. To be clear, most of the time, 99% of the time, there are things that you can do to keep yourself safe. 99% of the time. This idea that like sometimes no, that's bullshit and it's wrong, and it shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how rape happens. Most of the time you can do something to take protective measures or preventative actions. Most of the time, in the vast majority of cases. Rape doesn't just magically happen out of nowhere.
Or the rape happens like mid-sexual encounter, or they're already drunk. Oftentimes there is like literally nothing they can do.
That's not true. That's just a lie.
But in
That's
the
just
cases where it does
not
happen,
a lie, but
like
it's just wrong.
taking responsibility, like this is the definition of victim blaming, right? Imagine if you're in like Saudi Arabia and there's like a Western woman there who like goes to a private party as part of a like a bit of business travel, and she dresses as a Westerner would, which is legal within the context of that business party, and later like a magnate like finds her and rapes her or something. And later when this gets out, people are like, well, she wasn't wearing a burqa. You wear a burqa to protect yourself against men's eyes. So you need to take responsibility. Like, you could have prevented this. You can understand how like this is basically just like rape apologia, right? Like you're essentially just.
It would depend on the social norms of where you go. Like if there's like an expected outfit or an expected thing based on where you go, and then if you deviate from that, you're likely to wind up in a lot of trouble or whatever. Like, I mean, it's not good, and we probably shouldn't support it or whatever. But like, I don't know. I guess I gave the hitting kids in other households takes, and people got really mad. I don't know. If I go somewhere, like I make sure that I'm aware of like what are your customs, what is your culture, like what are the things that I need to be aware of, because I think it's kind of your responsibility to like know where you're going. Like, well, how do people act here in ways that keep you like reasonably integrated? There's a saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, whatever. Isn't that what that means?
like minimizing.
No, Vaush, no. I think it's not unreasonable if you're a father to a daughter in Saudi Arabia that because you don't want your daughter to get hurt, you would tell her, hey, I know you don't like the burqa, but maybe you should wear it until things change. That's not an unreasonable thing for a father to say to his daughter. If I had a sister, I would tell her that same thing if I lived in Saudi Arabia. Just like if I had a sister and she's like, Alex, you're so wise, give me advice. I'm really worried about rape. I'll be like, okay, well, obviously rape is messed up, but there are certain things you can do to minimize the chances. That's not unreasonable advice to give.
Okay, has he ever given advice to men on how not to rape women?
Well, I mean, like, Vaush, like, you just don't rape women. Like, I think
well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because if his
come on.
interest is in preventing rape, and his audience is young men, like, I'm willing to bet 99% of the people watching him are men, it's very interesting to me that his rape prevention strategy would be reminding people that rape victims need to take responsibility, but no mention at all of what men can do to not rape women. Which a lot of men rape women unknowingly. A lot of men rape women because they feel entitled or because they feel embittered or insecure and they want to feel powerful over a woman. They hate the fact that women, you know, get their pee-pee hard. So they you know, that it sort of manifests as a complex. And a lot of guys just don't know what consent is. So they'll fuck a woman who's blackout drunk. They'll fuck a woman who is like murmuring no, but the guy like pretends not to hear it because he thinks that if he gives good enough dick, like she'll actually end up liking it, which, spoiler alert, that doesn't work. Don't do that. Like, are these tips coming through Andrew Tate, the rape preventer? I think not, and there's a reason why.
Vaush, but I think if a man wants to rape a woman, a YouTube video is not going to defer him from it. Just like, for example, if someone is determined to go out and kill people, you're not going to convince them from a YouTube video. All you can do is give advice to potential murder victims and say, hey, listen, maybe you shouldn't walk around with large amounts of money, not a lot of change. Don't go to this part of town at night. I think it seems more reasonable to give advice to potential victims than to criminals who are going to commit an illegal act. And I don't believe a YouTube video can get criminals to change their behavior.
The point of Andrew Tate's streams is to change people's behavior. He's trying to teach you how to be an alpha. Why would he believe in the ability to change millions of people's behaviors? His whole Hustle Academy thing, all of this is about changing behavior, but you can't change it out of doing something bad, maliciously or otherwise?
Do you think you can change rapists from raping? Like, do you think you have that kind of...
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of rapists rape because of political opinions.
Fuck, they're both so wrong. You can change people. You can change people out of raping, but I don't know if either of these people have the same understanding that I do for like how rape occurs. It's not just like people going out looking to rape people. It's usually just like really bad understandings of like consent or bad understandings of like how to properly like court somebody without like trying to trick somebody to fucking you, basically. And I mean that's behavior that you can definitely have an impact on.
There's a reason why. Yes, like thinking women are subhuman. Yeah, do you think there's a relationship between like hate crimes against black people and racism, for example? If you can convince people out of being racist, you lessen the likelihood of them doing a hate crime. Likewise, a lot of rapes do happen like unintentionally because a lot of guys don't understand consent. You can convince people out of this. You can move them from that position. But I think Tate's content was like rape maximization. I think like that, like the content form that he produced is like optimized for making young men rapists, both in the sense that they have no understanding of and an active disregard for consent, and in that they're contemptuous towards women, which motivates a lot of bad behavior.
Okay, there's so much you said that I want to unpack. Can you give me 1 minute to take a piss and then we'll get into it?
Sure. Oh, fuck, wait, yes, I can. I think I can go for another half hour.
All right, cool.
What's going on? What happens in a half hour?
I'm sure this must be frustrating for some of you, but I feel like I'm actually doing a really, really, really good job here.
I'm sorry.
Hold on 1 second. I forget which monitor my thing is on. Okay.
We were talking in offline chat last night, and someone brought up that asking a woman, "Are you my GF?" over and over again may be a form of rape. I don't know if this isn't the true answer. I haven't watched you for long. What's your take on this? Asking somebody over and over again can be rapey, but like you should know when to stop. Like the reality is that like if we could get most guys to not be as pushy, that would probably stop a lot of rape, like over 50%. But the other reality is if you could get a lot of women to be like to just say no, that would also probably stop like over half of rapes. Like unironically, most guys, even in the middle of sex, that are pushing for things, if you tell them, "Hey, no, we're not doing that," they'll fuck off. This, like, I'm bisexual. I know this from personal experience because like 50% of the guys that I've been with are unironically rapey. But usually just like, "Hey, no, it's not what I signed up for. Get the fuck off." Like they're done. They'll be like, "Oh, okay." They like act awkward and they're like, "Whatever." "Oh, I didn't know." Like bullshit. You fucking didn't know. This is true of probably 95% plus of like sexual situations. Even if you're a smaller person, even if it's a girl and a guy, most people that are trying to quote unquote like rape you or do fucky shit aren't looking for pushback. That's why they're doing it in the middle of the act because they know that's when you're like the most likely to not say no to something. They know that's when you're the most likely to kind of like acquiesce, like, "Oh, fuck it all, blah, blah, blah." Like if a woman provides like any amount of pushback, usually a guy will fuck off. Usually. Somebody's going to link me like, "Well, what about this guy who was like a 600-pound violent rapist that like murdered people, blah, 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 blah." Like, okay.
Pigeon is like turbo heating my leg right now. By the way, I don't think the guy that I'm talking to is malicious or like dishonest in any form. I literally just think like this is a product of the culture there. You know?
Almost.
Like
Wait, what is this? Hold on. Is it me, or is the clip not enough to justify the autism thread in LSF? Zerka is clearly joking, and Adriana did not mean Slick was locking people in. Oh, I don't know. Never mind, we're gonna...
Okay, so let's kind of break it down like this. Let's say there's two sides to preventing rape. One is on the male side, or let's just say mitigating rape. There's no matter what you say, what you do, there's always going to be rape, right? But let's just say mitigating rape. One is on the female side, one is on the male side, right? Let's just assume that content creator chooses to address the female side. He says things like, hey, listen, as a woman, if you want to, minimize your chances of having something very bad happen to you, maybe you shouldn't go to this part of town at this time of night. Maybe you shouldn't, go home with a guy that you barely know. Maybe you should meet a guy in public first. Is that unreasonable?
I don't think it's unreasonable to give advice, but I think it has to be evaluated in the context of the situation. Given the fact that what Andrew Tate was doing on the opposite end was kind of cultivating pro-rape behavior on the guys.
Damn.
Like, let me put it this way. Imagine if you have a son downtown in like 1943, right? In the American South, if you're black and you're out after dark, like you're probably going to end up on a tree, you know? And let's say that like...
there weren't... I don't think they were lynching that many black people.
And you're out...
Actually, wait, it would depend on the year he gave. Actually.
After dark, like let me put it this way. Imagine if you have a son downtown in like 1943, right?
In 1943, they were not lynching black people that much. If we go to the 1800s, possibly. But 1943, no. No.
In the American South, if you're black and you're out after dark, like you're probably going to end up on a tree, you know? And let's say that like in one summer, like 3 black kids get lynched within the same week. And there's outrage and in response
somebody has the I saw there was either a study or stats on this where I want to say it was like by lynchings in America. KKK were doing that shit. They were lynching, but past the 1900s, it started to get like a lot more rare, I'm pretty sure. I think there's like, if you watch, like by the last like 10 years the KKK was active, I want to say there were like 6 lynchings. I'm not obviously that's bad. They shouldn't have any lynchings. But like, it wasn't like if you go outside, the KKK is going to catch you every time, you know? If somebody has the link to those numbers or whatever. Lynching year. Oh, is this the number of lynchings by year? So like in the 1800s here, you have like 49 black people lynched, 53 lynched. I don't know what the fuck the source is on this or if I necessarily trust this. Maybe we should be a little more critical. Yeah, Wikipedia, we know that's safe. 1882 to 1901 saw the highest period of lynchings. After 1924, cases steadily declined with less than 30 a year. But by like in the 40s, you've got like 5 lynchings in a year. 4, 6, 3, 2, 1, 6. Like it's not like if you go outside, you're gonna get lynched. It wasn't like crazy like that, right?
The white governor of that state puts out a bulletin advising black people how to not be in those neighborhoods. Do you think like that might like kind of signal?
You're basing this on your experience. No. Do you think you being a man, regardless of physicality, might skew that perception? No. Most people that are trying to rape you, I think, are people that are just trying to like do some shit to see how much they can get away with. I don't think most men have it in them. 99% of men, 95% of men that quote unquote rape aren't going to have it in them to like actually try to rape somebody that's like pushing and fighting back. If you're a woman and a guy's like, oh, I'm gonna fuck you with that condom, and you're like, no, and if you like smack up or you're like, most men aren't gonna continue to. That's gonna like fuck people up. Most people, like 98% of humans are like wired to be pretty good, decent people. That's how scams work. You take advantage of the fact that most people are like this. Like the type of man that would hold somebody down, like, I'm gonna fucking rape you, bitch. That's an exceptionally sociopath. You're you're like 4 standard deviations off of normal human behavior there. You're really, really, really far from the crazy territory. So yeah, there might be some people do that, but that's gonna be an incredibly rare situation.
Certain set of intentions. The fact that the governor, like, it wouldn't be about like additional resources to catching the hate mobs or the lynchers or anything like that. It's just like, well, how do black people, you know, like just not be in those towns? It's kind of like an affirmative position for the racists in a way, because they're not fixing the problem.
It is different because Andrew Tate is not in any way involved in the governance of anything at all, right? So this would be more like a successful white leader in that town in 1920 who likes black people saying, hey guys, listen, we live in a pretty fucked up world, so I think for you guys it makes more sense not to do this and this and this, right? That's not an unreasonable thing for that white person to say.
If that's all, so I mean, you're right in that he's not a public official. A governor back in 1920s would have less people listening to him than Andrew Tate did today. But the point is the power and the message involved. If black kids are getting lynched and all you say is like, hey, black kids, you know how you could avoid that happening? Stay the fuck out of Whitey's town, you know?
Jesus.
If that's all you have to say, that's, as far as I'm concerned, a pro-lynching position. Because all you're really doing there is making sure people pay attention to the victims and focus on what they could have done to avoid. But rape has always happened. Like, as long as you're looking at the victim of rape for answers on how to prevent it, you will
Megan, why did she do this?
never find answers. Because women get raped when they wear lots of clothing or not a lot of clothing. When they go after asshole guys or really trustworthy guys. When they go after, like, weaker or stronger men. Women still get raped. So, like, focusing on their behavior, you know, seems to me like largely a waste of time. Most rape victims aren't like out there in thongs, like spreading their pussy on a bar table while with a blood alcohol like percentage of 10% or whatever, you know. Most rapes happen from people already known to the victim, and oftentimes it involves like inebriation or like taking advantage of or like abuse leading up to it. And in these contexts, education on consent can be vital.
But there are things that women can do to mitigate the chances of getting raped. Yes or no?
There are always things that they can do, but exclusively focusing on that while promoting the attitudes in men that leads to rape, kind of like it doesn't fix anything. No women are watching Andrew Tate's show, or like maybe 5, right? He's not saying women need to take responsibility for what they did to contribute to the rape to give advice to women watching. There aren't women watching. He's saying it to the men, the misogynists in his audience, who want to be vindicated from the feminist accusation that modern men aren't doing enough to lessen rape, which is true. They don't like that feminism is calling men rapists, even though they tend to be, disproportionately at the very least. They don't like the idea that there's any kind of social responsibility at work there, so they want to misdirect, pull it away from that issue. Well, actually, maybe women should be more responsible. Oh, women have been getting raped en masse for all of human civilization, so maybe that's not like the right approach. Damn. You know?
You can say it doesn't fix anything, and that's your opinion, but that's not the same as it being destructive. Like, as we started unpacking that statement, it just becomes less and less bad. Now we're at a point where we're like, okay, maybe it doesn't fix anything. And you might have a point there. We could debate whether his message is fixing the problem or not helping the problem. But we can't say it's making the problem worse when he's literally just giving a very reasonable, common sense shit that I think the vast majority of people already know. This is kind of like, okay, let's flip the example, right? There's certain parts of the city that white people should not go into at night, right? I don't think there's something wrong with a black person saying to a white person who's very cavalier, right, and just thinks you can go anywhere, like, hey man, like, listen, I'm concerned about your safety. I really don't recommend you go to
Okay, I'm gonna give you a super white take right now because I've never been in like super crazy gang areas. But like, I feel like if there are dangerous parts of a neighborhood for like gang related shit, I feel like it's got to be dangerous whether you're black or white. No? Or like, I feel like, and I could be totally fucking wrong here. I could be totally wrong. But I feel like in some of these places, it might even be more dangerous if you're black. No? Like if you're a white dude walking around in some weird fucking gang area, people see you, I guess you might get robbed or some shit. But like, I don't think if you look like some clueless like me, like walking around, I don't know if people are gonna assume like, oh, that dude's like up to no good. Like maybe somebody will rob me, but I feel like you run a bigger risk if you look like you're from there and you're in an area you're not supposed to be. But I could be totally fucking wrong on that. This is like the Wire knowledge like coming in. I have no idea, but like I feel like your elevated chance would be probably to get robbed or something. But yeah, white people are very, very robbable people.
Compton at 2 a.m., right? I don't think that black person is contributing to the, black and white violence. I think he's just giving some common sense advice that maybe that white person needs in that situation.
Like I said, I don't think that social safety advice is always wrong. I think that it's good to be prepared, but he's not talking to women to give them advice. He's talking to men to make them feel like they don't have to bear responsibility. And again, if he's so concerned with preventing rape, I mean, listen, you didn't even think it was possible to lessen the likelihood of rape by trying to convince your audience of millions of young men to behave differently.
Vaush, I wish I was-
Oh yeah, true.
Bike on this road. So there
Like
must
these
be
dudes?
station somewhere. My God, they have guns. Jesus, Jesus.
Go, 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 go.
No, please, what? Please, what? Please, what? No, Espanol, please. We're just...
Like, I feel like if these dudes were Mexican or like super Hispanic, I feel like they'd be in more trouble than just being like the most whitest fucking people ever. Although his friend, it might be Hispanic. I think.
Por favor.
¿Dónde vas?
Por favor.
Hey, come on,
Please.
no problem, okay?
I'm about to pass
No
out.
problem, okay? No problem.
Logan, don't. It's okay.
Oh,
It's okay.
hey.
It's okay.
No problem, okay? What? You will.
Can we go?
Well done.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Please, please,
Yeah,
please, por
no,
favor.
okay. Hey, no. Easy.
No pasa nada.
No problem. Hey,
Okay.
easy, okay? Hey, ¿dónde? Cancún. ¿Dónde?
You okay?
We're gonna see mi madre.
You where?
Cancun.
You?
No problem.
Do you think the cartel thinks they are gay, considering the way the guy in the white talks and is acting? Wouldn't they most certainly kill them? So I could be wrong. I've heard this from Lauren. I've gotten emails about this. I haven't had any emails ever contradicting this ever. So I could be totally fucking wrong. And if anybody emails me saying otherwise, I'll say, okay, well, I've gotten other information. But what I've heard is that if you're in cartel areas, generally in Mexico, it's usually very, very, very safe for like white people, tourists or whatever. Because if you start killing people there, one, you'll destroy any tourism in that town. And two, you bring a lot of unneeded attention on yourself. Now, that's what I've heard. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've heard that like if the cartel people think that you're like bringing drugs in and shit, you're getting dismembered and like buried in 17 different spots. But if you're just like some white dipshit wandering around or whatever, as long as you're not like up to some shady shit or whatever, generally they have pretty strict policies of like you're not supposed to fuck with these people because it fucks with like everything. Especially these guys are in Cancun. I've been told by a few people, if you go to Cancun, you're not supposed to wander off like the touristy areas because you can get into sketchy areas very quickly. But it's not like they're gonna assassinate you on sight or some shit. Like you don't want a bunch of like white Americans being murdered in fucking Mexico when the fucking United States is right above you. Probably not gonna be the good kind of attention.
What's your name?
Aaron.
Eh? What's your name?
Aaron.
Aaron.
Hey.
Logan.
Edwin.
What's your name?
Philip.
Philip.
No problem.
Apparently, somebody linked me. This is the front view of their car. Damn, this would be scary.
Jesus.
Go.
No, please.
That split second choice by the driver might have unironically saved their lives. When he stopped, because the other Logan was like, go, and I was like, bro, I don't know if running here is the best idea.
Jesus.
Go.
As soon as he starts backing up and then he stops, oh man, good stop here.
No, please. What? Please. Please, what? No, Espanol, please. We're just...
No problem.
Jesus Christ, dude. I will say, dude, I went back and I've watched a lot of the different Lauren documentaries. She is actually fucking insane. Like the places that she'll go and the areas that she'll be in, that's like probably the most respect I have for her is like some of the insane fucking traveling that she would do. Jesus Christ. I think in part of that last documentary we watched, isn't she like recording like one of the cartel dudes secretly while she's like there? Jesus fuck. I would never do anything like that. Nope.
was that popular? The millions of young men? How
No,
popular do you
with
think I
I mean
am, bro?
Andrew Tate's, but like
Oh, okay.
any of us, any audience. Like, of course you have the power to do that. 100%. You can change their positions on things, their understanding of consent. And the purpose of focusing on the woman's role, the victim's role, is to detract from that. And he doesn't talk about consent, and he doesn't talk about like respecting women's agency or boundaries. In fact, he talks about the opposite. A lot of pickup artistry is about breaking down women's boundaries, ignoring their agency up into the line where you think they might like fucking call.
That is not really true of whatever like second wave shit we're on right now for red pill shit. I think it's generally like it's like women are shallow bitches. We just have to make ourselves like attractive people that they want to fuck by playing on what women like. I don't think it's usually about like breaking down women to the point to where they want to fuck you. Or if it is, I haven't heard any content like that recently from red pill people. That's generally not what the vibe I get is.
For the police or whatever, like be as aggressive as you can, because maybe it'll put a lot of women off, but the ones who are like ceding to it are going to give you pussy by the end of the night, you know?
I don't think I've ever heard this take from modern day red pillars. Maybe from older ones, but yeah, this just sounds like the late 2000s, like the red pill pickup artist shit. Like the some of the branched off to like the MGTOW and just like the really crazy stuff like that maybe a long time ago, but what?
Is that G word bannable? Is it a bad word?
Gusano?
The other one. Gringo. Is that a is
gringo? No.
If I called a white guy gringo on Twitch, do you get banned for that?
I don't know. Probably not. No.
Okay.
Go try it. See what happens.
Come on, bro. They already trolled me. I want to know.
I don't know. I mean, like, technically it is a racial slur, but I think it's, like, not that big of a deal because it's a racial slur for white people. I think that it's, like, I think that gringo, it's, like, I don't think that, I don't even know if I'd say gringo is a slur. I feel like gringo is more, I think gringo is more, like, friendly than anything else. Like, if a Hispanic person was, like, super fucking mad at a white person and they wanted to go off, I don't know if, like, gringo, I don't know if that's, like, a word that's going to come out.
No, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about me. Am I allowed to? When I called Wes a fat jar of mayonnaise, that's okay to say. White on white, right? On Twitch. But if I called Wes gringo in a mad way, then would I get in shit?
I have no idea.
Because if you
try it,
could unlock,
it's probably going to depend on like how you say it and how it comes off. That'll be my guess, but who knows?
Because I'm thinking I just unlocked the word.
Try it. Isn't it just slang? It's definitely not a slur. I mean, slang can be slurs, but I don't know if gringo is like a hard-hitting. Like I could be wrong because I haven't spent too much time in Hispanic communities, but I feel like gringo could be used in like kind of a friendly way. Whereas if you compare to like cracker, I don't think anybody's ever like friendly calling you cracker. Like, hey, this is my cracker friend. Like that always feels like kind of a shitty word. Whereas I think gringo can skirt the line a little bit, but I could be totally wrong on that. I don't fucking know, dude. I'm not Hispanic. Or I kind of am a little bit. I don't actually know. I need to do 23andMe so I figure out like there might be a whole world of slurs out there that I can use.
All of this is like a bubbling cauldron of like pro-rape logic.
Jesus Christ.
That people need to be like convinced out of. It's important.
Vaush, I do have to comment on this. You're strawmanning the pickup artist position on this. It's not about pushing the line as far as possible. It's more about being polarizing, right? Being a more polarizing individual, and then some girls will like you, some girls will not like you, right? It's not about pushing the line as much as possible. I don't know any mainstream pickup channels that give that advice.
Yeah, not anymore.
You don't know any mainstream pickup artists that have talked about pushing women's boundaries as a way of interpreting whether or not they're...
And Vaush doesn't have a single fucking example, does he? So he's just going to ask these questions kind of like rhetorically. You don't know anything about this? Well, I don't know, Vaush, do you? This is your debate. You've come to it. Do you have an example? But he's not. He didn't come prepared.
Lower confidence or like insecure, like negging.
Who says that?
I don't have a list of them. It's this real. Do
you don't need a list. You just need one example, homie. Just one example.
I think this isn't like a tendency. Like if you went to like Return of Kings or like the Red Pill or anything, this isn't like a common part of pickup artistry.
Well, Return of Kings is no longer really up and running. I mean, that was based on what's his name? Rouge, yeah, similar to your name, Vaush. Rouge. He's in exile. He's like a religious, like
older
freak
people,
now.
yeah,
and
so
a pickup artist.
He's like hasn't been in the pickup community for like.
You see what I mean when I say like all these people? I say the same when it comes to like the alt-right too. I feel like these people live like in a time capsule where like that Innuendo Studios guy making videos about the alt-right. Like, bro, the alt-right doesn't exist anymore. Nobody cares. Like, who are you even talking about at this point? There's like 2 people on the internet that still call themselves like alt-right. Like, nobody cares about this shit anymore. And like, what pickup community is Vaush talking about here that's like advocates for shit like this? Like, this is like some old like crazy shit. Like, I don't think people typically talk about this kind of stuff anymore.
5-10 years. I've been in this community for 6 years. I haven't seen like anything like that, at least not in any of like the mainstream big channels. I'm sure there's some really random unknown channel that is probably saying that, sure, but not any of the big content creators. Like, there's not like, it's not like us pickup artists are sitting around saying like, oh, let's see how much we can push the line. That's not happening in the community. If you want to convince me otherwise, you have to show me some kind of evidence for that.
I admit I did not
bring anything.
A series of statements on that particular.
I like how Vaush keeps trying to like down or upplay. Like how much effort would it take? I didn't bring like a whole fucking list of things, dude. I didn't bring, bro, nobody's saying a whole list of things. Just like one example. How about a single example from a guy that didn't go out of date or out of style like 7 years ago? Just bring like one example, dude.
Subject, so I'll have to leave it there. In my experience, the idea of like negging, for example, is like testing a woman's self-confidence and responsiveness to like.
I don't know. Do any modern like red pill dudes talk about negging anymore? I don't think I've heard that a single time from like Sneeko or Fresh and Fit. Is that even a thing anymore that people talk about? They might, I just don't hear it, but like
all of this is about pushing boundaries. To an extent, pushing boundaries can be a healthy part of like a new relationship, as long as it's done in like a respectful and, you know, mutually sort of beneficial sense, you know, and that's like a really complicated social topic. But I don't think Andrew Tate was teaching that nuance, you know. I think
but you don't even know what Andrew Tate's teaching.
You know, I don't think he made any statements, frankly, that would have been like about directing his audience away from like raping women, which would be nice if they wouldn't, you know, rape women, I guess.
Let me just quickly address negging.
Jesus.
So negging, I think you're incorrect about that. Negging isn't about pushing the woman's boundaries. It's about bringing down her self-esteem, right? So she'd be more likely to go for you. Now, negging is a very outdated concept.
Yep.
It pretty much every single pickup artist who's like at least like somewhat popular in the last 10 years has universally said that negging is pretty cringe. You know, it's pretty well out there that, you know, all negging, all that shit. So like, yeah, like vast majority of like the popular pickup channels, they don't talk about negging. They usually say it's cringe. It's something that's very outdated, but it was never about pushing boundaries. It was about bringing down her self-esteem. And it's usually pretty obvious and it's pretty cringe when people do it.
I don't disagree.
Moving on to the, I just want to correct you on that. You misspoke, guys. Moving on to the preventing rape on men. So, okay, so this is, I think, another disagreement we have. I've heard, okay, here's what we probably agree on. There's a sentiment in the red pill community that, you know, rape is overreported. You and I agree on the fact that rape is actually underreported, and this is going off a lot of anecdotal evidence. I have a lot of female friends who've been raped who never went to the police, so I've just seen so many evidence of that. I've had, you know, countless stories of girlfriends, girls I hooked up with, female friends who've been raped. Never once in those stories have I heard that, well, it seemed like he didn't know what he was doing. I didn't tell him no. Every single one of those stories, the girl says no multiple times, and the guy ignores the no. So I've never really seen any kind of anecdotal evidence.
I super disagree with that. I'd be really curious. I guess anecdote versus anecdote, but like that seems highly improbable to me.
Evidence of this accidental rape.
Isn't well, a good example of accidental rape, and this isn't like you know, like accidental murder is murder, right? Or I guess it's manslaughter. But like oftentimes, like aren't a lot of guys taught that like no means yes? It's such a common attitude that there are literally like songs talking about
Again,
that.
no means yes. All of this shit is so outdated. I don't think any of the like modern red pill duders are like talking about shit like this anymore. Like this is so old.
That's right. There's that Baby It's Cold Outside, or that Pushing Boundaries.
Bro, these are songs from like the 60s?
The idea that like
when
they say no or like shit testing you, and you like push through 3 no's to get the one.
What was the year for the original?
I don't have like a list of like men's, like modern, I guess, men's pickup artist attitudes on this
40s?
issue, but a lot of guys seem to think that like women have this barrier that you have to push through to have sex with them, which is. The barrier is like them liking you. That's true. I mean, the barrier exists, you know, but if they want to fuck you, they want to fuck you, you know. You never want to like get a woman to fuck you because they're like acceding to you being annoying. But a lot of guys seem to have that attitude. I grew up with guys like that. I went to high school with guys like that. I went to college with guys like that. And a lot of these guys just genuinely don't seem to understand that if you get 50 no's and then 1 yes, like you're decent chance you're raping her because she might like be coerced or pressured at the point. There might be factors you're not aware of that are sort of impeding her ability to consent. Stuff like that.
Okay. There are elements of truth in what you're saying, and there's also elements of falseness. Women will test men. So an example of this, you're going home with a girl and she's like, I'm not having sex with you, right? Typically in those situations, you wind up having sex as soon as you walk in the door. What is the woman doing, right? The woman is testing you. She wants to see, are you going to get really reactive? Or
Fuck. Yeah. My personal experience on that is very limited, but if a girl says, we're not having sex, right? I'm thinking most of the time we probably are. That would be a really weird statement for her to say but my personal experience on that is like so small that I don't know if I could but that is true. Like generally, if a girl's making any references towards sex, probably something's going to happen. But
you're going to be like, are you going to be like pushy? You're going to get weird about it. You're just going to be like, oh yeah, no worries. We're not having sex, right? Like typically every time I've been in that situation, literally.
There's no way.
There's no way what?
There's no way you haven't been tested by all the harems.
No, yeah, but I'm just saying. No, wait, you didn't even listen to me, you fucking retard. You just assumed what my response would be, and then you called me without even listening to what I was going to say.
What did you say?
That chances are, if a girl is ever bringing up sex, it's almost always going to be something happening.
No, but here's what they're saying. When she goes, we're not fucking, right?
Yeah, like if a girl says that to me, I'm thinking that something is probably going to. Otherwise, why the fuck would you even say that? Why would you even bring that up? That's where my mind is going most of the time.
But isn't that where the negative would come in handy? I remember my younger friends would be like, the girl would be going home with them, and she'd be like, we're not gonna fuck, and they'd actually get very overreactive and stuff, and it was a huge turnoff. You hear what he's saying?
Yeah, of course, because you have to be cool. Like if somebody's like, we're not gonna fuck, you're like, wait, I thought we were going to, please. Yeah, obviously you're gonna come off as you have to be a little bit cool about it. Like, oh well, hey, if you don't want to, I can call someone else. Yeah. I don't know, you do some shit or whatever. Yeah.
When I really started going through the dating phase in my life, they'd come to my house, right? And then they'd say, I'm going home, I'm gonna get a cab or an Uber or whatever, right? And if the faster I would say, okay, yeah, there's the door. If the faster I'd show them the door, the more they'd be like, hey, what the fuck? But when I was younger, I'd be like, well, why are you leaving? And get all cringe about it and shit. And they'd always leave. And I'm like,
I mean, I would say this also, it's going to depend on each situation too. You have to be careful with that because there might be some people that generally, but yeah.
Well, I don't date anymore, so I'm
true. Good job. You're married. All right, I'm going back to this. I need to go soon. Fuck you. Bye. Okay.
The girl tries to fuck me as soon as we get in the door, right? So women do test men,
but that isn't. So if you're at the bar or something and she says that, there are a bunch of answers I think that are fine. You can say oh, I guess we'll see, or oh, if you're a loss, or I have a gigantic dick, you would have died anyway. Whatever you want to go for. But if she's like, I don't want to have sex with you tonight, you look at her and you're like, well, we're gonna have sex anyway. She's not going to like that. That's not the right answer, right? So if you're back at her place and she's like, yeah, I don't feel comfortable having sex, and you're like, are you sure? You sure you don't want to? That's not playful banter back and forth.
Right. Well, that's why you have to be able to discern when a girl is giving you a boundary or whether she's playfully testing you.
I agree, but I think that test is part of banter, and it's something that as a guy I engage in as well. So I think that's just part of the back and forth. But there's a difference between that and actively pushing a boundary, when they don't want something and you try to. But a lot of guys don't seem to get this. And I've had partners that I've hooked up with, or friends, or who have been with guys like this, who just have this very they get angry if a woman says no, because it feels like they feel like they're kind of entitled to sex because they had dinner together, or maybe she led him on because she felt his dick up in the car or some shit like that. But then later she's like, oh, I don't feel comfortable, whatever. And then they get angry, and that anger kind of makes them think they're getting fucked with, and that makes them more likely to rape her.
Yeah. There are guys who get butthurt when they get rejected. 100% agreed. Going back to what we were discussing earlier of this accidental rape, a woman isn't gonna just if she's not interested, she's not just gonna be like, well, I'm just gonna lay here and hope he gets it. Women, every single story of rape I've heard, it's always been, I told him no multiple times, he wouldn't take no for an answer, right? It's not like the guy just accidentally tripped and wound up falling with his dick on her pussy. It was always no, and the guy ignored that. Well, it wasn't the guy just didn't know any better.
So let's say we're talking pure malice then. Not a disregard for boundary, but an active willingness to rape, okay? People who are racist are more likely to commit racist hate crimes, right? I mean, that's kind of straightforward. Isn't it possible that people who are misogynistic and who are taught stuff like women are dogs they don't know what's best for them, men need to lead them around, these people might have less concern for women's agency when it comes to stuff like sexual autonomy.
Sure, yeah, you can make that correlation.
I wouldn't have granted
Yeah,
that.
so
but-
I think like that would be another one. It's like 2 levels, right? You need to teach consent so people know what they're doing, and then you need to teach like I guess I'd call it like feminist advocacy, or like at least not being a misogynist, so that you have enough of a respect for women that you don't have a malicious desire to rape them.
I just don't think as a content creator, like if you have someone who hates women and is determined to like get sex at all costs, I don't think there's anything you can say or do to talk them out of it.
Okay, you can talk people into it, can't you?
I don't think you could not talk me into raping anybody. I don't think you can talk someone into raping a girl.
Not you, but think about it. Like a lot of these modern alt-right terrorists who like
I think
shoot
Alex
up
on a
store
bad
and kill black people or
line
whatever,
right now
they like
of
online
argumentation.
content creators who pose similar messaging. People's behavior is affected by their biases, and they get biases from media. And we are the media. Not all of it, but a good part of it. You know, independent content creators make up a huge portion of where people get their news these days. So if a person's watching like 8 hours a day of the Tate stir, and he's getting like, yeah, women don't know what's best for them, like false rape accusations are out of control, like women like it anyway, like women like it when men will sup them around, haha, it's just a joke, but not really, like they get that. And this guy is like young and insecure and already doesn't like have a good relationship with women. You're cultivating that behavior. It's not a one-to-one thing, but with enough people in your audience, eventually you're going to like produce that,
I think that is a big stretch. That the stuff that Tate is saying is leading to more rape across the world. But going back to the earlier point is again.
I disagree with Vaush's argument.
Again, we're talking
He's made
about
it well,
accidental
though.
rape.
I don't think Alex
I
countered
just
it very
don't
well.
see like that happening. Like, would you not agree that like pretty much every time rape happens, the woman says no, and usually she says no multiple times.
I just super disagree with this point.
Oftentimes I've noticed that accidental rape, insofar as it is accidental, is through unintentional consent. You know the It's Always Sunny bit, the like because of the implication thing? Like
Yeah.
Like that. A lot of guys don't get that. Like if you go to get drinks with a chick and you're both like mildly tipsy, and then you're like, oh, let's hang out at my place for a bit. You bring her back to your apartment, you have the car, and then like you're like, oh yeah, so you want to fuck? And she's like, oh, I don't know. And you're like, I think we should fuck. That'd be fun. And you're bigger than her and you're stronger than her and she's mildly tipsy and not like that snap on the judgment anyway. She could say yes right there. And I still think that like, even if that doesn't meet the legal definition of the rape, at the very least, it's a bad thing to happen, And stuff like this, it's like blurred lines.
The only thing that I find troubling about that is she's sort of tipsy part. The rest of that, I don't know. I think that's just like how most situations go. You wind up at someone's house. Sure, technically you're bigger than her, and there's the implication that something could go wrong. But like you can't. What are you supposed to do? Like as a guy about that, you're bigger than the girl.
You be careful. This is so clear a point that It's Always Sunny made a joke about it. Like that was the point. The point was that Dennis was like a manipulative like rapist, so he would take it. So there you go. Like it's enough of a thing that it was the premise for a comedy bit there.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty funny joke. I don't know if it's like It's Always Sunny. Like they make fun of like literally everything, like including race shit.
Well, but there's a reason why the joke works, right?
It was creepy. Like the premise of the joke.
Right,
was
it is creepy for sure. It is very creepy. Yeah, sure. It is very creepy if you get a bunch of girls on a boat and then you don't take no for an answer. And it's like they can't say no; they have to fuck you. That is creepy. Sure, I agree with you on that. I think most guys aren't getting girls out on a boat with a dirty mattress like in the boat, like with Mac on the side. Like I think that's not really happening to most dudes.
What about your apartment though, right?
But then where are you supposed to go with a girl?
Well, I'm not saying you can't bring her back to your apartment. I'm just saying that it's a delicate situation where she might feel that she could meet with violence if she doesn't like suck your dick or whatever.
Sure, I agree.
That happens.
I agree it's a delicate situation. I don't know, just every story I've ever heard of rape wasn't really like the girl saying, yeah, I went back to his place and I never said no, but like he could, I just felt like a little intimidated. Like every story I ever heard was like, hey, I told him no multiple times. This guy wouldn't take no for an answer. That's every single story of rape I've ever heard. And there's been dozens and dozens.
Well, what if she did tell him no multiple times, but after the 4th or 5th time that he insisted that they should, she said yes. But she's like getting the vibe that this dude is going to break her nose if she like keeps saying no,
Well, yeah, if a girl says no 4 or 5 times, that should probably be the end of it. Like, yeah, I would agree that's very messed up if you're like pushing past like the first no.
But she said yes eventually, didn't she?
She might have in this hypothetical, sure. I think at that point, okay, is it rape or is it just being very pushy? I don't know. Where do you draw that line?
Well,
it's probably messed up either way.
I don't think it meets the definition of rape legally, that specific scenario, but I would definitely say it's a violation of her consent and morally wrong and should be avoided.
Right, but I don't think it's unreasonable at the same token to tell girls, hey, listen, like, if you want to minimize your odds or something like that happening, maybe don't go home with a guy, or at least not right away. Maybe feel out his vibe first. Like, I think that's like pretty good advice for women.
But if you had a female friend who got raped at a guy's apartment and she told you about this and your response was like, okay, maybe don't go to guys' apartments then. Like, do you think...
Well, that would just be very insensitive on my part. Of course, I wouldn't say that to a rape victim. That would be very insensitive. But maybe later
happened
down
like
the
3
line,
times in a
if
row.
She came to me after she processed the trauma, and she's like, Alex, I'm really worried about this happening again. What do you recommend? I probably would say, well, maybe you should avoid going to the guy's apartment. That just more has to do with social tact and being sensitive.
What if she'd already known the guy for a while and she went back to his apartment after like meeting up 4 or 5 times?
Well, sometimes luck, can fuck you over. Sometimes like you just get unlucky. Sometimes you do everything right and you still get
Unlucky.
fucked.
So we should focus on another aspect of the 2-person rape equation, right? The person actually doing the crime then.
I think we should focus on both. I think we should help women mitigate risk. And I don't know if it's possible to help men who are, I think you have to be somewhat a sociopath to rape a girl, because you have to have a lack of empathy for her feelings, right? I think the vast majority of like regular guys would not do that because they have enough empathy and sympathy for the girl. But I think I personally don't think it's possible to get that kind of like a low-key sociopath to change his behavior.
This is it's really dangerous to say this. Rape isn't just like a mental illness, or like the ability to rape isn't just like a brain problem. It's caused by social forces. People are more or less likely to be rapists based on predictable social factors that we have control over through the messaging we deliver people. When you say it's like, oh, you have to be a sociopath, what you're doing is saying like there's nothing we can do about it, which is a pro-rape sentiment. If you say if there's a social problem and you're saying it is caused by an inimicable and unavoidable flaw in human design, you are preventing anything from being done about it on that end of things. You're leaving that side of the table unaddressed. The problem is, unfortunately, that like people don't want to hear it, but feminism and the Me Too movement are the things that have made rape less common. You can take a look at like projected like proportion rape statistics throughout time, and the modern second wave feminist movement has been like the big defeater in terms of like the likelihood of a woman experiencing sexual violence in her lifetime. And that's because people's political opinions changed. Guys got exposed to different ideas. A lot of guys who used to believe that women were just naturally inferior, like God made them, like Eve was from Adam's rib, like they grow up listening to other ideas about like women's liberation, and it makes them less likely to rape. Not 0% likelihood, but it does help.
I'm just not convinced that content creators or media have the power to reduce rape. You would have to present some kind of evidence for that to me. I'm open to changing my opinion. I just haven't seen any evidence that we have that kind of power. I wish we had that kind of power. I don't know if we do about that. I don't know.
I don't know where this idea comes from. Why are we called influencers? It's because we influence how people think. Of course we have the power to control how people think about some things. It's what we get paid money for. It's why you get paid to advertise shit. Of course you do.
See some evidence of that claim.
We talk to millions of people. I mean, I talk to millions of people, and Tate's like a million times my size. Like it's media, people's opinions. If you can influence...
what's the evidence that even though you talk to millions of people, you can change the
behavior?
people who want to rape a girl from raping? Like, I don't know. I just personally don't think we have that kind of power, even if we have 1 billion subscribers.
We know that people's likelihood of raping is affected by political influences, and we know that content creators can affect the political biases of the people who are listening. So transitively,
but is that correlation or causation?
Well, we know that there are causative forces in both cases. We know that like we can determine like through longitudinal studies on populations, like the introduction of different ideas. Feminist ideas definitely like tend to reduce the likelihood of rape in a society, and we know that feminist ideas are political ideas, and political ideas can be disseminated through media, including what we do.
Do you think there's any amount of media power, or I don't know who your favorite content creators are, but let's just assume all of them adopt a pro-rape position. They're like, rape is great. Do you think there's any amount of media pressure that could get you to rape someone?
Well, me personally, of course I don't believe that. I don't think any person believes that about themselves. And like, ask anybody, what advertisement
I think
could
it could
get
happen.
you to buy this product? And a lot of people are going to say like, nothing. I'm immune to advertising. But advertisers know you're not. Advertisers know that you're so not immune to advertising that they'll spend billions advertising to you. Nobody's going to admit like, yeah, I would change my mind like on this position I have Like if I would like listen to a YouTube video while strapped to a chair. But we do know that the predominance of some types of media change people's opinions. We see this with news broadcasts, TV shows. Like, people are affected by this stuff.
But just try to. I understand the point you're making. Sometimes it's implicit. Sometimes it's hard to be conscious of what affects you. But just try to take like a second and like really think, like, objectively. Do you really think that there's any amount of media pressure has the power to get you to rape? If I'm being honest, I'm thinking about myself. I don't think there's anything. I don't care if every single one of my content creators adopts a pro-rape position. I don't think that could cause me to bunch my issue on rape, because I just have enough empathy to know that that would be really horrible if I was in that girl's shoes.
Empathy's learned, though, and what you think is hurting the girl is also learned. Like, I'm not biologically different from a guy who grows up in Saudi Arabia, but that guy probably has a way worse attitude when it comes to, like, women being raped, you know? The difference between me and that Saudi guy is that he grew up being exposed to different influences, one of which was media, right? It's not like a biological thing. If there are differences in the propensity for rape in different populations, that can be explained by their influences.
Well, no, I do think there's some biological elements, of course. I think they've been talking about like the murder gene or whatever, and they've kind of identified several flips that happen in your head that can make you more likely to murder, right? So you would think if there's things that biologically make you more likely to, the big three: the narcissism, Machiavellianism, and sociopathy or psychopathy, right?
He's talking about the dark triad.
That Saudis have more of a biological disposition.
No, I'm not talking about Saudis. I'm just talking about in general. Like, forget the Saudi thing. I'm just talking about like they've identified that there's certain biological triggers that can make you way more likely to murder. Well, I think a lot of that applies to rape. I think there's certain biological things that can make you way more likely to rape.
He's a rape realist.
Biology isn't a factor.
I'm so sorry.
The
I'm just
fact
kidding.
that there are average differences between populations can be explained by social forces. So the average Saudi and average American probably don't have different genes when it comes to acceptance of rape, but their average opinions would differ significantly. And that's because they're exposed to different types of media, different influences growing up. All people are is nature and nurture. And nature-wise, humans all over the world are basically the same. But humans behave very differently depending on where we grow up, which must be explained by nurture. And I think that as long as you latch onto that, you recognize that people are really, really susceptible, even if they don't think they are.
But what's the evidence that Saudis are more tolerable of rape? I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I just want to see proof of that.
I would just say the attitude that they have towards the laws against rape. The fact that like attitudes towards marital rape, for example. Why was marital rape legal for like basically all of American history and then only recently became illegal? Like, why did we become more tolerant? Did our genes change? No, of course not. Our political opinions changed on whether being married to someone made it acceptable, you know? What about attitudes towards the abuse of children? Historically, marrying underage brides by our standard was like the norm, not the exception. But now in America, if you marry a 14-year-old girl, people dislike that. Did our genes change? No. Like, the attitudes we have changed because of the environmental factors that we were exposed to.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look at like countries with the most rape. I actually am curious to get to the bottom of this. So South Africa is number 1. We got Botswana number 2. So we got a lot of African countries. Sweden is number 6. So Sweden is actually above Saudi Arabia. That's interesting.
Sweden counts their rape shit a lot differently.
It's going to vary depending on the way in which they report rape statistics. Yeah. Sweden, for example, will report every individual rape separately, whereas here in America, it'll be collectively reported as one. So if a dad chained a daughter in the basement and raped her 70 times over like 2 weeks, that would be 70 rape cases in Sweden, and in America, that'd be 1.
Jesus.
Sure, I understand those described. I mean, according to this, what I'm looking at right now, I haven't researched this too closely, but United States is number 14, way above Saudi Arabia.
But you understand what I mean about the marital rape?
Evidence.
Right? Like, the marital rape, like our attitudes on whether it's okay to have a child bride, or it's okay to, like, rape your wife. Like, those have changed, not because of changes in genetics, but because changes in what we consider acceptable. For most of human society, child brides were not that uncommon, but now we recognize that that's statutory rape. So,
I think Saudi follows Islamic law, and I think there's some really bizarre things about Islam, not to open up that whole can of worms, but I think that's like the big issue there. I think it's more has to do with religion.
But that's cultural. Religion is disseminated through cultural signifiers, right? The media you consume, the imams you listen to, right?
Yeah, my mom.
Sure. I mean, I think that though an imam has a lot more power than media does, like in the West. Like I think those people think that what an imam says is the word of law. So you can make an argument how if an imam says, "Hey, guys, rape is okay," that certain of those fanatics will go out and rape when they normally would. I just don't think we have nearly that much power in people's minds.
Well, I would be happy to continue talking about it with you, but unfortunately, I have another conversation scheduled.
Yeah, no worries, man.
This
yeah, no,
flew
it was
by.
fun. I know, dude. No,
yeah.
yeah, I enjoy our chats. You know, even though we disagree on some shit, I enjoy our conversations for sure.
Everybody was
So,
saying
thanks for
Vaush
coming
got
on, buddy.
destroyed in it. I think Vaush did okay here. I don't know what you guys are saying. He got completely